Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, because we are going to talk about a 24-hour event. So you can attend no matter what time it is. Of course, we're only live right now. So whatever time of day it is to you, welcome. We are here today to talk about, well, first and foremost, WP Accessibility Day, but also to talk about one of our platinum sponsors, which is Equalize Digital. And I have with me today some people from Equalize Digital. So I would like you to introduce yourselves and what are your roles at Equalize Digital? Amber, ladies first today.
All right. Well, it's kind of funny that I'm here. I was just here. This is a WordPress Accessibility Day double feature. And if you can see me, you can see that I changed my shirt because I was like, I'm going to take off my organizer shirt and put on my Equalize Digital shirt. I am the CEO at Equalize Digital. And I think we're going to talk more about what Equalize Digital is in a little bit, but that
Absolutely.
is my role at Equalize Digital. Steve?
And Steve, I thought you had an AC/DC hat on at first, but it is not. I love
Nope.
that. So for people who
Describe
are
it.
listening, I was just going to say for people who are listening and are not watching, Steve has a hat on that looks like the AC/DC band logo, but says WCAG on it. So pretty cool. I love that. So Steve, what do you do? What do you do at Equalize Digital? And where did you get that cool hat?
Yeah. So somebody tweeted out the hat. I got it off of Etsy because somebody that was cooler than me found it first. But
Nice.
so I'm just jumping on
I
it.
get some points because I think I saw somebody tweet it and I tagged you and I was like, Steve, you
Yeah,
need this
yeah,
hat.
Perfect.
yeah.
West Coast brim
No,
and all.
yeah, I know. Yeah, you got to keep it. Yeah, but I'm Steve Jones. I'm CTO of Equalize Digital. I oversee all the development of our products and services.
That's awesome. I love that. So for people who aren't familiar with Equalize Digital, I know who you are. I know what you do, but you're probably still going to school me on a few things because I can't know everything. Tell us a little bit about the products and services that you have at Equalize. Amber?
Yep. So we are a company that is fully focused on WordPress accessibility. All we do is accessibility stuff. We do some stuff outside of WordPress, but we love
No.
accessibility, and that is what we do. I know it's hard to imagine, but we do. So we have a WordPress plugin called Equalize Digital Accessibility Checker, which is used to audit WordPress websites for accessibility problems. And we offer a range of services related to accessibility. So accessibility auditing, and that is where we frequently get outside of WordPress. Like right now, we're actually doing some auditing for WordPress VIP's hosting panel, which is not, as you can imagine, not a WordPress website. And we've done a lot of auditing outside of WordPress land. We have audit and remediation plans where we try to make it really affordable for anyone to make their website more accessible, where you can spread out the cost. And we do a little bit of auditing and a little bit of fixing for WordPress websites every month. And then we do user testing as well with people on our team who use screen readers every day.
That's pretty cool. I tried using a screen reader once just to have the experience of doing that, and I was like, holy cow, can I slow that down? And I've listened to people who are blind or low vision use screen readers, and they listen to it faster than like is typical. And I'm like, how do you get all that information through your head so quickly? But that's something that people have different abilities on. So yeah, screen readers are wild and phenomenal all at the same time. I love that. So you talked about the accessibility. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so I also run the official WordPress accessibility meetup, which is part of the meetup program. And for a while there, Alex Stein was coming once a quarter and volunteering his time to audit WordPress plugins and give during the meetup, and you can find recordings of these. He would go through a plugin with his screen reader on, and at the beginning, he would always start just so everyone could hear what was the speed that he listens to it at, which is not 95% or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you imagine, a lot of us might watch YouTube videos on 1.75 or 2x. His speed is probably 4x is what I kind
Yeah.
of think of it. If you're trying to imagine like a podcast or a YouTube video being sped up. And then he would be like, okay, now I'm going to slow it down for all the rest of you. And he'd be like, God, this is so painful. It's so slow. And the rest of us are like,
And it was
wait a minute, we're
still
trying
fast.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that meetup, you did an audit of one of my projects, and I sat there the whole time, like in awe. Like at the end, I was like, I think I just saw a drive-by meeting because it was so fast. I didn't understand like how he could access all the information and be able to say this works, that works, this needs help, that doesn't work, like all of those things so quickly. And at the end, I felt a little bit like lamb to the slaughter, but mostly.
Oh, I hope
mostly
we were nice to you.
You were absolutely perfectly nice, and I was able to take a lot of that information. I'm sure our site needs more work now. We've had to redesign all of those things, but it was so incredibly helpful. It really is. It does take somebody special, like, to say, please, in public, tell me what's wrong with my site or my plugin. So people with plugins, like, gosh, that's awesome.
You get applause. I'm doing the sign for applause.
The sign,
because you were very brave.
But I imagine that, like, and that's a community website. Plugins and themes are like, that's a commercial thing, and a lot of websites are commercial. They're trying to raise money, so it's so much more important even then that you're able to reach a bigger crowd. But every website should be accessible for sure. But I do want to talk about that accessibility checker plugin, because holy cow, I invested money to purchase that for websites, and money well spent. Like, even Amber, you came to me afterwards and you were like, actually, do you want me to give you a refund and we can like do some cross promotion and things like that? I'm like, no, you guys deserve all the money that you charge for this, because it is that phenomenal. I just renewed recently in like the last month, and I was like, yep, money well spent. Not ever going to turn that one off. But
thank you.
Of course, for people who don't know what the accessibility checker is or does, and maybe weren't at Showcase Day at WordCamp US, so they didn't get to hear about it there. It's not on WordPress TV yet either, so we can't even point there yet. Tell us a little bit, Steve. Why don't you tell us? Number one, what is it? But how also did it come to be?
Yeah, the Accessibility Checker plugin is an automated accessibility scanning plugin. We have a free version of the plugin that is full featured on the .org plugin repository. And from, if you were at Showcase Day, you know that Amber and I's goal and my goal around the accessibility checker was to democratize accessibility. To kind of tag on to Matt Mollingwood's democratizing publishing. So the accessibility checker goes through and scans what can be automated, like when it comes to accessibility, and it will find errors and warnings. And warnings are typically things that you need to evaluate, do a human audit on. It scans directly on your post. So in a meta box at the bottom of your post, you will get reports on the accessibility of that page as you save the page. The button in WordPress now says save, not publish. So now when you save, now whether or not that's a draft post or a published post, it will scan. You can also do full site scanning if you have our Pro plugin, which Michelle has invested in, and we greatly appreciate that. You can do a full site scan of your whole website, and then that will collate your issues into ways that are easier to understand. We call it fast track, which allows you to surface issues that will get you the highest impact on your website. So if you have something in your header or your footer that you can fix, and you have 100 pages of your website, you've fixed a lot of issues just by fixing one little thing. We also have an add-on called the Audit History, which allows you to track and report accessibility over time. This add-on allows you to export that data into an Excel spreadsheet as well. The Accessibility Checker does not utilize any external APIs, so there's no per usage or per page fees. And in our free plugin, we don't limit the number of pages you can scan. You can scan infinite number of pages. And we did this in an effort to bring accessibility to the masses, because accessibility can be very expensive when running off of a third-party API. So that's kind of the brief rundown of the plugin.
I love that. I do love the features. I will say, and I think I asked a question similar to this at WordCamp US. It feels daunting when you first run it and you're like, that is a huge list. And my question to you back then was, what's your best advice to somebody who like looks at that? And I know you hinted at it already, Steve, but looks at that list and goes, oh, I'm just going to close that door for a little while because I can't, right? Like there's just so much. So what is your advice to somebody whose site was so inaccessible or had so many issues, I should say, that they look at that list and feel overwhelmed by it?
Yeah, so we developed the plugin not to just be a tool to scan and to surface issues, but it's also an educational tool. So we have very thorough documentation that we've put together that is coupled with our plugin. So every issue that we highlight in the details tab of the plugin, there will be a supplementary link to documentation where you can find out what's the issue, what WCAG guidelines does this pertain to, how to fix it. So we're kind of going hand in hand with the user, trying to educate them at the same time. But you're right. You could use the Pro plugin with the fast track, and that will surface the max number, the issue with the max number of pages and the severity, and that will allow you to address those kind of global issues first to get some big impact. Yeah, so we try to come alongside you and educate you at the same time. Our plugin has a front end highlighter now, that where if you're in the back end and you're looking at an issue, you can hit view on page, and what it does is it jumps over to the front end of the website and it scrolls to and highlights the exact issue on the page. So in the back end, you see a code snippet, and not everybody's the developer and understands the code. So what we've done is we've given you a visual way to go, oh, okay, so this is the image, or this is the button, that has the issue. And then we have a window there that shows a description of the problem and link to our documentation as well.
See, I thought you were going to say it's like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. You just got to
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
That's what I tell people a lot of times is that, like we said earlier, it's a journey. I don't think anyone expects that you're going to make a website accessible overnight unless it's like a one-page website, right? So we use the plugin. Creating this was very much like scratching our own itch. So when I was talking about those audit and remediation clients, what we do when they come on, they get the audit and remediation plan, and then they get a pro version of our plugin. And then we put that on, we run a full site scan, and then there's a view in that where you can see all of the issues by type and like their count. And so then we look for things that we know are going to be critically blocking. I mean, we're also doing manual testing and a lot of remediation of like header, like those kinds of areas, like Steve said, but looking at your content. So we might say things like empty links, which might be because you're using like a plugin to do your social media icons, and it's only got like an SVG in it or an icon font in it. It doesn't actually have any meaningful text that says, this is Michelle's link to Facebook, Michelle's link to LinkedIn, like those kinds of things. And sometimes those show up a lot because they're in your footer and they show up on every page. And the solution for that doesn't even necessarily, sometimes it requires code, but sometimes it's like you just go say, I'm not going to use this, and I'm going to change it to, like, for example, the WordPress core social media block, because that one has the appropriate text for screen reader users, or a different plugin maybe. So sometimes you can swap out a plugin and that will change a lot of things. Or we look at, like, maybe you just say, I'm going to work this month on all of my ambiguous links. An ambiguous link is something where it's like, click here or learn more. or just like download, but it's like download what?
Mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm.
And so then you can get a list of them on every page. You don't have to go page by page if you have the pro plugin. You can also do this in the free if you just open. I'd look at like your top pages that people go to, and you could open and look for that problem. But in the pro plugin, it will give you a list of here's all the pages or posts that have that, and you can just go and fix that thing. We typically will try to be like, what can we, if we're on a page, we'll like, let's fix all the things. So if it has headings out of order or images missing alternative text, we'll fix them at the same time. But also sometimes we might just say, no, we're prioritizing, making sure all of our linked images have alternative text before the images that have alternative text, because obviously it's a much bigger problem if it's a link.
Right.
So like picking one or two things that can be blockers for people and just starting there, and then just planning, maybe even if it's only like an hour a week that you go in and fix a few things on your website, or fix like 1 or 2 pages. And that can really make things. Do we have a
lost
cat?
my audio. Hold on 1 second.
Well, we can still hear Michelle. But anyway, for everyone watching, yeah, I think it's really just like pick 1 or 2 things and you can make progress over time. And that's really what makes a difference, I think, is, like you said, eating the elephant one bite at a time.
Right. And if you have our audit history add-on, and you're in a company that's trying to improve your compliance, and maybe there's an internal effort to do that, or maybe there's a legal effort to do that as well. Like if you are working at it, like you said, eat an elephant one bite at a time. If you're working at it as so many hours per week, that our audit history will track that progress over time, and will show that you are making an effort to making your website more accessible.
So I have a wild animal in my office right now who's stepping on keyboards.
I noticed that. It's a cat.
Everyone was interested in what's going on in here before, and I'm like, all of a sudden I lost my audio because she jumped on the laptop. So I apologize for all of that.
All good.
You never know what you're gonna get when you're going live. I did miss some of what you said.
I know she wants to ask questions about accessibility too.
Yes. She wants out, but the door's closed from my cleaners, so that's another story. But thanks for bearing with me. My goodness. So one of the questions I had, I think you've kind of answered it already, Steve, when you talked about that not everybody is a developer, but who is this for? Like, who is Accessibility Checker for? Is there one kind of person? It's not necessarily developers. Can anybody learn from it? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think everybody can learn from it to some degree, right? But it's definitely catered towards people that are working on WordPress websites.
Right.
So like a good target is content creators, right? Like content creators are using it as they write their post. And a lot of times content creators aren't technical developers, right? But at least there's a tool that's there that's saying, hey, something isn't right, right? And then they can read what the issue, the summary of the issue, and then they can go read our full documentation on the issue. They may not fully be able to fix the issue, but they are at least alerted that there is an issue, and maybe they can elevate it to their development team, because another big audience is the administrator of the website, right? They get access to all the settings and all the reports and all the full site reports. So I think it's definitely for users of WordPress, and I think it can be used by anybody in any role within WordPress.
So yeah, we're trying really hard to make it. It's a hard balance, right? When you're making a tool that accessibility professionals use and developers use, and then also a content person. And I think we're continuing to iterate, and we have some features and ideas for how we can make it, more streamlined just for like the author type user role in the future. But I will say our goal is to create a plugin that can be used by the diverse audience. And the biggest tip I would say, if you're someone who's just maybe like a power user, like you're not a developer, you build your own website, you're really savvy, like you pick your own plugins, all of those kinds of things. If you run into something where it scans and it finds, for example, the comment fields in your comment form on your theme are unlabeled, yes, you're probably not going to be able to fix that. But I would always advocate for people, go post in the WordPress.org support forum for your theme, or where, if you bought it, go to wherever you bought it and say, hey, this is an accessibility problem, because this is not just for you, it's for everyone who uses that theme. And this is a really great way that anyone can give back to WordPress and support accessibility by telling the theme developers or the plugin developers that there are accessibility problems and saying, hey, this matters. Can you please fix this? And I found most of them are very responsive and they want to fix it. But they just don't know. So I think that's like a goal that we're hoping with our plugin, is that it makes it easier for everyone, even if you can't fix the problem, to at least be aware that they're there, and then you could figure out who to surface them to.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great. I've learned a lot about the plugin through using it. I learned a lot about it from being in the audience at WordCamp US this year. Amber, you were on the stage, I think, 3 times at WordCamp US this year.
I was. It was kind of fun. I will say that the one in the middle was a little nerve-wracking for me when I did the speed build. I definitely did not win. Brian Cords won, but it was still a really fun experience.
I heard one of you won for mobile and the other for desktop. So I would not.
I got points for mobile. Yes. I think my mobile was a little better than his.
That's awesome. The WordCamp US experience, though, the showcase day especially. So you all got to get on the stage and talk about Accessibility Checker on the stage, a little bit about what you do at Equalize Digital also, but what was that whole experience like? Because, I mean, I got to talk this year too about something completely different. And it was, I don't say daunting, like I don't get nervous to talk. It was exciting, but when you've got something like this that you guys have put blood, sweat, tears, and money into, what was that experience like for you? Maybe not blood.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I think it was really exciting. It prompted us to do something that I'd been saying for a year plus we needed to do, which is we needed to set up a way for people to spin up a demo of the plugin. Like a lot of big plugin companies have, here's a demo. You can just try it out without buying it, but we're small. And so it forced me. I was like, no, we really need to do this. Which if you want to try it, you can go to equalizedigital.com/demo. We don't have that in our nav anywhere yet. It's not linked on the plugin page, but it is going to be. That is my goal before the end of this month, that I will surface that for more people. But so I think, it's kind of nice to have a deadline or something that motivates you to be like, hey, we're going to do this extra thing that we've known we needed to do for a long time, but we haven't yet. I felt like we got really good feedback. Did you think the same thing, Steve?
Yeah, I think for me, a big takeaway for me was, I know when Amber and I were working on the slides, that we kind of wavered back and forth a little bit about should we really get this technical? Do people really care about the dev side of the plugin?
How it works in the back end?
Right. I think we had 2 slides that were real technical, and I was like, I don't know if anybody cares, or this is really going to bore a lot of people, right? And then afterwards, a lot of people are coming up. A lot of the developers were real interested in the technical side. So it kind of was a little eye-opening for me to maybe be a little more open and share a little more about the technical side and the technical challenges that go into making a plugin like this, because this plugin is in no way your typical WordPress plugin. It's trying to achieve something that I was told was unachievable inside of WordPress. So kind of sharing that story a little bit and getting other people's feedback was definitely a huge takeaway for me.
So you've heard it right here. Michelle, you're going to back me up on this later when I go to him and I say, Steve, you got to write some blog posts. He said it right here that it's important to do that.
I heard it. And I know there'll be accessible posts too. That's the important part.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest things, is you have to practice what you preach in a big way, right? But when you do it, as you do, it's second nature. And that's one of the things that I think is the hurdle for a lot of people who are building websites, whether it's building their own website, whether they're working in an agency, or building tech into WordPress websites, is that hurdle of trying to start and make it become something that is second nature. And Amber and I, we were at WordCamp Phoenix 2023. And I said, I always forget to put the alt text on images when I'm tweeting things out. And you said, oh, you can get a prompt for that. Let me show you. And pulled up my phone and you showed me how. And now if I don't put, if I don't remember, it'll be like, are you sure you want to post that? And I'm always shamed into remembering, right? So I never do it intentionally. But I will be shamed into like, you forgot again, right? And make sure that I put those things in there. And now it's second nature. Now, I never get that message anymore because I always remember to put alt text in to anything that I post. I don't have those same prompts in other places, but because I'm doing it in one place, now it's second nature to always describe an image when I put out an image. You just have to start, right? So where do people start? Where's the starting point for somebody who's like going, gosh, I really need to do this. How do I get started in making sure what I'm building is accessible?
Yeah. So, I mean, a great starting point is install our free plugin. You don't even have to buy it.
Absolutely.
Off WordPress.org. It skins unlimited posts and pages. So if you have a regular blog with just posts and pages or business website, that's all you need is the free thing. And I think that's probably the best way to start, like trying to find that. The other thing that I always recommend too, it's important to note that automated testing tools can't find every problem.
Right.
So do something like turn off your mouse, use your tab key to move through your website, tab to go forward, shift tab to go backwards. And then you can use the return key on links and the return key or the space bar on buttons. And make sure you can do everything on your website without a mouse that you would normally do with a mouse. So that means using the navigation menus, adding products to a cart, submitting a form, changing slides in a carousel, opening and closing accordions or tabbed content. I think if you do that and you do some automated scanning, it may not be perfect, right? Because that's not even talking about turn on a screen reader.
Right.
But if we're talking like, what is where to start?
Yep.
Automated testing plus doing some keyboard testing would make a huge difference for a huge number of users. And I just did this live stream for WordPress Accessibility Day with the Yoast team, and they were talking about how much overlap there is with accessibility and SEO. And so if you start doing these things for accessibility, you may actually find that you're bringing a lot more traffic to your website and people are converting more because it's ranking better in search engines and just all this stuff.
And you bring up a point that I've mentioned in other podcasts and things, is that sometimes we only move benefits for disabled people forward by making those benefits also apply outside of that. So for example, people didn't want curb cuts back in the day, but curb cuts also help people who are moving a dolly, put people with strollers, right? It's not just for wheelchairs. Elevators help everybody, right? They're not just, everybody has been in an elevator, not just people with disabilities. And so the same is true for the web. Accessibility helps your SEO. Accessibility helps all these other things. It's a shame in some respects that that's sometimes the impetus for getting things done. But on the other hand, thank goodness, because people are more willing to put time and energy and focus into their SEO if it also helps accessibility. So kind of a two-edged sword in a way, but thank goodness that other things lean into that so that it makes accessibility even more important. For sure.
Yeah.
So I've worked in other plugin shops before. We all know where my background, like when I was at Give, and I still work with all of the Stellar plugins, of course. But when I was there, we had kind of a roadmap, and we would let people like submit ideas and upvote, features and things like that, which makes me think, gosh, Accessibility Checker must have some kind of a roadmap as well. Do you get feature requests all the time? How do you manage that? And how do you decide what's coming next? And can you tell us some of the features that are coming next?
Sure. So we do have a roadmap of sorts. Some of the methodology around roadmaps we're working on internally, whether or not we're going to, call them roadmaps, right? But we definitely have a lot of project strategy. And I think Amber and I and Chris have ideas for days and not enough time to implement all those days. And we do get a lot of feedback from our clients as well. But we could tease a few things. So something that's in the works now that will be coming out, hopefully before Black Friday, is we're working on automated fixes. So we've got some global fixes that we can reliably fix programmatically, and we're trying to do that in an intelligent way, not just you know check the box and hope that it fixes the issue. We're actually trying to fix the issue and then rescan it with our own tool to validate whether or not our fix actually passes our check.
Mhm.
So um, so that's coming in the near future. We've got a good set of global fixes, such as adding skip links
Mhm.
and we have a plugin called our new window warning plugin, which adds a warning if a link target is set to blank, which opens a new window. And what that does is it adds the appropriate screen reader text, and it adds the appropriate visual indicator that that link opens in a new window. So that is a fix. So we're kind of bringing things like that inside of the accessibility checker and trying to do it in a thoughtful and intelligent way. Outside of that, a little more future looking is we're trying to expand into some more enterprise level features and tools, such as dashboards where you can manage multiple websites all in one place, and have some advanced auditing tools, and you can send out scheduled email reports of the accessibility of your website.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I love
Yeah.
that you already built into it like a report so you can see accessibility over time. Because I think, especially for an agency, to be able to show the client, look at the difference. And then if you can also equate that to visits, time on page, sales, all of those things, to say, we told you it was important. Now we're showing you how it actually worked that way. So I think that's phenomenal. So, in addition to Amber, I'm going to ask you a question. In addition to sponsoring WordPress Accessibility Day, which, by the way, thank you for being one of our platinum sponsors, you're also on the board of WP Accessibility Day nonprofit and a lead organizer for the event. So, obviously, you think the event is important because you're putting time, energy, and money into it. But can you tell us a little bit more about the impetus behind why you think it's so important?
Yeah, I think it ties a little bit back to why we also volunteer our time to run the WordPress accessibility meetup through the meetup program. I really feel like what I have found in the community is there are a lot of people who care very much about user experience, and they want to build good products. They want to build beautiful, usable websites that do what they're supposed to do for everyone. But most people just don't actually know how to do that from an accessible standpoint. Many people haven't even heard of accessibility, or they've heard of it vaguely, but they don't know how to put it into practice. I think this is a failure of, let's say, college courses. There's lots of web development courses that don't talk about it. Boot camps, many of the dev boot camps don't talk about it. And on the college courses, I'm not even just talking about the dev courses. Like, you might have a communications major or a design major that never learned about color contrast or accessible design or selecting fonts for readability, right? Um, and and then the other thing is, in WordPress, so many of us are self-taught, and we learned just by Googling something and reading Stack Overflow or some really great people in the community who put out amazing tutorials, and then literally testing it and forgetting semicolons and then freaking out and then going back, right? Like, that's where I think a lot of people are coming from in the WordPress community, is just not being in a place of knowing it. And so to me, uh, I want to say this is like around 2020 was when I first said, hey, we really need to start a meetup, because there's this huge educational gap. And it's not that people in WordPress don't want to build accessible plugins or themes or websites. It's just that they literally don't know how. And around that time, Joe Dolson and some of the other people on the WordPress core accessibility team founded WordPress Accessibility Day. I was not involved with the founding. I was a volunteer the first year. But they did it. And I was like, this is a great event, because what's really important about the event is that it is a 24-hour event, which means that no matter where you are in the world, there will be talks during your business hours. You don't have to be up super late at night in order to get access to the content. And so it didn't happen in 2021. And I went to Joe and I said, hey, I really think we should reboot this, because I think it's really important that we fill this gap in the space. It's also why WordPress Accessibility Meetup, we have one that's at 10 a.m. for us in the US. And then we have one that's in the evening for us in the US, but it's 10 a.m. for people in Australia, right? Like we're trying to balance out this global need for education. And so I think that the event is so important, because until we know like literally how we do it, we won't be able to build accessible things. So
I think that's you make a really good point. Absolutely. You shared or Joel might have been the one to share a statistic the other day in our, because I'm on the organizing team as well, so in our meeting, about the fact that not only are we having this 24-hour event, it spans all of the globe and all those times, but a significant number of our speakers also identify as disabled in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's really cool, because to hear it from people who live it, not because they want to teach it, but because that is their reality, I think is super important. It's like asking somebody to explain how wide a door needs to be for a wheelchair, or how deep an elevator needs to go. But they have never lived in a wheelchair. And so they don't understand that, it may need to be that wide, but if the buttons are too high, it's still an issue, right? So when you get to hear people speak from their own mouths, from their own experiences, I think that's super cool. What are you most looking?
Our speaker, I was just going to add on to that. The speakers who have self-reported, so we don't know, there might be more than this, because it's totally optional. But this year, I think it's around 24%, which matches the global population of people with disabilities, according to the CDC and the World Health Organization. And I do think it is really important that we do that. We have speakers from many countries around the world. So there's a lot of different diversity in opinion and experience, and who is actually, sharing knowledge. And I'll say honestly, like, I learned something at every one of these too, even though, Steve and I, we're like constantly looking at web content accessibility guidelines. We're constantly practicing accessibility in our own work and with our customers, and like testing things and auditing things. But all the time when I come to these sessions, and I think that's one reason why I think this also being virtual is so important, is not just 24 hours, but there's literally no travel cost to attend. You can register 100% for free. It's on Zoom, which is like one of the most accessible ways to have a conference. And we have sign language interpretation. We have live captioners, all of this thanks to all of our sponsors. And like that to me is the epitome of accessibility, right? Like having the accessible voices from around the world and on an accessible platform, and you don't have to travel to do it,
Right. And if you can't access it, if there's a talk you really want to hear and you need to be asleep or you're in a meeting, they're available later on YouTube as well. So they're even more accessible after the fact, because you can access them, which is pretty cool. Now, I have to say, so this is my first year joining you all on, the organizing team. And there is a couple inside jokes in the accessibility community that I just nodded and smiled until I understood them. And one of them is this year's t-shirt, which none of us are wearing. But can you tell us a little bit, Amber, about what the t-shirt is and how that came to be a thing?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what the t-shirt is, and maybe Steve can explain for the non-devs the dev language. But the t-shirt this year is orange, which is our accent color for the year. And it has colon focus with a rectangle around it. And then below that, and that's kind of big. And then below that, it says, "It's a feature, not a bug," which is, yes, it's like an inside joke. But Steve, as a developer, I'm sure you've had to explain this
Before you do though, Steve,
Yeah,
let me say
wait.
that my cleaners were here today, and I had some clothes that were hanging and needed to be put away because they were drying. And I heard the mother say to the daughter, "Focus, it's a feature, not a bug. I don't get it." And I was like, I didn't either, but now I know. So, Steve, for those people who don't know, what is the joke behind that?
I mean, I haven't had to explain it to anybody, but
Oh yeah, because you don't talk to customers as much, do you?
no, I'm a, I work in code. I try not to talk to people, but
I try not to talk to people.
Well, what is colon focus? What is that?
it's the focus state of your elements on the page, right? So like it's how you target, like with CSS, you would target things that can be focusable and you can change the appearance of it. And right. And focusable elements are what keyboard users use to get around the page. And it's there it's there on purpose. Don't remove those styles, those especially like those default styles, because you don't think they go with your design, right? That outline around a button is necessary for keyboard users.
Right.
Yeah. So when I was talking about earlier about using your tab key to navigate around, what happens is by default in a browser, it puts an outline around the thing. And then when you hit the tab key and you go to the next thing, the outline moves. And that's how you know where you are. And this has come up for us, which I do project management back when we haven't built any websites this year, which is interesting. We're like doing all audits and remediation. But when we were like designing custom websites and that kind of stuff, we would very frequently, typically, a typically abled person might not experience those outlines unless they're like on their mobile phone. You sometimes see them when you tap before the page like goes to that after on a link or something. Or maybe if you hold your mouse down on an element and right click and then open it, then they see it. And they'd be like, what is this outline? It's broken. Remove that.
And you got a bug.
Yeah.
There's a bug in the code.
Yeah. And then this literally happened in WordPress. So I had opened a track ticket about, there were a couple of elements where I didn't think the focus indicator was sufficient in 2024 theme earlier this year. And it got fixed. And then literally like a week after that came out, somebody's like, there is a black outline on this drop down when you click on it. And I saw Carolina, who's a core contributor from the Yoast team. She's like, having to explain, no, this is not a bug. And we were talking about t-shirts designs, and I was like, we need a t-shirt for this.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. And I should have worn my shirt today, but it wasn't dry yet. But I'll be wearing it next week for our event.
And people can get these shirts. When you register for WordPress Accessibility Day, you have the option of making a donation, and you will get a t-shirt as a thank you for making a donation.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I will say a tag onto that too. Like when we were creating some of these fixes that we have in development for the accessibility checker plugin, that the focus state, like we're trying to restore, like if somebody has removed all their focus states because they weren't pretty or they didn't match the design,
it was
right?
a bug.
Like, yeah. Accessibility checker, we're trying to go in and restore those back to not just a defined outline, but we're actually trying to restore it back to the browser defaults, because the browser default actually provides two outlines. It provides like a bluish and a white outline, both, so that the focused element will always be the contrast of the focus outline will always meet contrast on dark or light backgrounds. So that's cool. A feature.
It's hard though.
Plugin.
Yeah.
These are the things that I'm like, hey Steve, this is a really good idea. And he's like, okay, I'll figure that out. And then he magically does. At least it seems magic to me. He probably spends a bunch of time complaining at his keyboard while he's doing it.
When somebody else makes something work, it's magic. I agree.
I know.
So we are literally a week away from tomorrow. Tomorrow we've marked 1 week until, and it's hard to believe we been focusing on this all year, and it's like, oh, it's next week already. Is there something you're most looking forward to? I know it's not the lack of sleep, so don't say that.
Can I look forward to the sleep after the event?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there a talk that you're particularly interested in, or something about WordPress Accessibility Day that you're really excited about?
Steve, you go
And-
first.
Want me to go first? All right. So I've got a couple that kind of stood out to me, and yes, they are more technical. Imagine that. So the accessibility challenges with single page applications by Natalie McLeese. That one seems interesting to me because, Amber stated that we're doing a lot of audits and remediations, and we're having questions from clients that, so we're auditing not just WordPress sites, we're auditing single page applications. And we're starting to get questions in regards to the accessibility of those single page applications. And it's not as cut and dry as websites.
Yeah.
Websites are a little more cut and dry. There's a semantic markup that needs to be followed. Single page applications are kind of like whatever, right? It's a blank canvas. You can create whatever you want. So I'm excited to get some more education in regards to that and how I can help my clients in making accessible single page applications. And then the other one is developing accessible Gutenberg blocks by Kevin Scholander. And that's kind of the same thing. A little bit of my, we haven't done a lot of websites this year, but we have made our own website this year. And our my.equalizedigital.com, our dashboard that handles our plugin point of purchase and our affiliate program and things like that. We redid that as a block theme, or it's kind of a hybrid, but kind of a full page, full site editing theme. So I'm excited to see what Kevin has to say about creating accessible blocks and how I can implement that when we're creating websites.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's always so hard because I think they're all so good. And I don't sleep much during WordPress Accessibility Day, so I get to watch lots of them, which is fun.
Yeah.
I will say, I love the community that comes to WordPress Accessibility Day. We have the chat in Zoom turned on so people can talk to everyone. It's not just going to hosts and panelists. And there's always really good conversations and resources shared in the chat. So I always really look forward to that. A couple of the talks that I'm interested in, like saying things I learn. There's going to be a talk about accessibility laws in Africa. I feel like we hear all the time about US, Canada, and Europe.
Yeah.
But not anywhere else. So I'm very interested to hear from the speaker who does live in Africa about accessibility laws in Africa. There is another talk that's a little later, or it's early for me, 6 a.m. I'm like thinking I'm going to get up for it because I'm interested in it.
How many alarms will that take?
Yeah, we'll see. But it's how to juggle different teams at different places in their accessibility journey, which I think is really interesting, especially if you are, you could, from an agency perspective, I think you could apply this to like, okay, my designer, my developer, but also my customers. If you're like working at a WordPress product company, I think this would be applicable as well. But it is always so interesting. Like, how do you communicate to different people at different phases of understanding and maybe at different parts of the process? So I feel like there's going to be a lot that I might be able to take away from that one as well.
That's exciting.
Just two to shout out, but I will totally admit, every time someone asks me that question, I pick different ones. Because I love them all.
and not to underplay at all, but our keynote, Lainey Feingold, is like an accessibility attorney expert and so well versed. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing her talk also as the day kicks off.
Yeah, if I can give a tiny shout out, maybe I can. I'll share this later. I don't know if I have, but she came on our Accessibility Craft podcast that Steve, Chris, and I do. Steve is holding up his Accessibility Craft podcast koozie. She came on. That episode came out yesterday, and she teased a little bit about what she was going to talk about and just shared like some great advice just in general. It's always interesting to hear about laws or read about them, but to actually like get to hear about them from someone who practices not just law, but actually this type of law all the time is a huge opportunity. And I am also very excited that she was enthusiastic about coming and being our keynote speaker. And she's a big supporter. She has a WordPress website, and she is a big supporter of WordPress community in general too, I think.
That's awesome. And like I said, it's not just time and energy that you folks have put into this, but you're also sponsors, and you are platinum sponsors. Like, you really believe it. You put your money where your mouth is, all of that. And part of being a sponsor is you get to do some pretty cool stuff. So you have a giveaway that you're doing for I'm going to read to make sure I get this right, business license for the accessibility checker. So what does that include?
Yeah, so you have to register. Should I put up the registration
link?
Yeah,
that was my last question. So they'll put it up now so people know.
I'll put it up now. All right. So if you register for the event, which you can do if you go to 2024.wpaccessibility.day. I guess I should have added /register on there, but I didn't. But that's the website, 2024.wpaccessibility.day.
It's an accessible site. You can find the registration button from the homepage very easily.
Yes. Then you can go to our sponsor page. Go to sponsors, Equalize Digital, and there's a form when you're registered and logged into your user account that you can just enter for the chance to win. It is a small business license of Accessibility Checker for a year, which is a $600 value. It gives you 5 site licenses. It includes that audit history add-on that Steve described, and all of the features. So it's a good way if you're not sure, you could maybe enter and win it.
Definitely. So come for the really good content, stay for the swag, stay for the prizes, like figure it out. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, we also have so our swag that everybody can get is we wrote earlier this year a 44-page ebook about small business website accessibility. So that is linked on our sponsor page as well. If you want to go download that ebook, we put a lot, many hours into that. So yeah.
And you didn't call it Accessibility for Dummies, which is a good thing.
No.
Accessibility for everyone.
There are no dummies.
That's here. Right. You want to learn accessibility, automatically you are a smart person. Just for what it's about. So we put up the link of where to go for WP Accessibility Day. If people want to learn more about Equalize Digital and they want to learn more about the accessibility checker, where do they go for that?
Yep, so you go to equalizedigital.com. That is our website, and you can find Accessibility Checker right in the navigation menu of our website. The other thing that I will shout out is, the meetups. If you go to equalizedigital.com/meetup, that is a great place to find WordPress accessibility meetups. And there is actually one this Thursday. Part of me was like, why did I not cancel this before? But I'm like so excited about it. Jen Harris, who's also a speaker for WordPress Accessibility Day, she's going to be presenting about, she compared the accessibility of a bunch of different WordPress form plugins. And she is going to be presenting a comparison of that and what she found. So if you're wondering how your form plugin stands up on accessibility, you should definitely come to that. So equalizedigital.com/meetup.
Love it. That's awesome. I am very much looking forward to the full 24 hours next week. I'm sure I'll sleep through some of it, but I'm looking forward to that event. And I'm excited for you to sponsor it and to be part of the whole thing. So is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to share before we sign off today? I
think you did a good job.
No, we're fabulous. Thank you so much, Michelle, for flipping the seat on me and letting me answer questions instead of ask them.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and everybody watching, I can see 56, which is very exciting.
Nice.
Thank you very much for watching.
I do have one more question.
Please register. Oh, okay.
So here's my other question. So you set up a demo on your own website, which has to have issues. Otherwise, you couldn't demonstrate that a plugin works. How hard was it? Like, I'm a singer. I know how hard it is for me to try to sing off key. How hard was it for you to want to make an inaccessible website?
I don't know. I actually shared this at one point with some people on the organizing team because at some point it kind of became fun because I was like, what are all the things that I find annoying that people do,
Yeah.
but are really common. So I was like, I'm just going to build this. And then I was like trying to figure out like how, and at some point Chris is like, okay, you got to stop making it worse.
Yeah.
He saw what I was doing. Like we made it looks like an e-commerce shop with selling running shoes. And so there's a blog, and I had ChatGPT help me write posts. Oh, and by the way, if you copy and paste ChatGPT into the blog, all the headings come in as H3s, not H2s. So I just left that. So ChatGPT helped me add accessibility problems.
That's awesome.
So I don't know. It was a little bit fun in like a I'm doing something bad kind of way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I can get that. Like, I'm gonna be really bad. You can like play like you're a really good person, but you play the Grinch in the play. So
But then I had a few people be like, "Oh, wait, like your search field is labeled. You should hide the label because most people don't actually show the label." So like people were giving me ideas of things that I should make it
worse, so that people learn how to make it better. I love it.
Yeah,
and that's true. Though, you learn good design by learning bad design first, right? You don't know about the mistakes until you see the mistakes. You don't know what's inaccessible until you can't access it. So it's actually a really good idea. So anyway, thank you for indulging me on that final question, because I just thought that was a lot of fun. But throw it up one more time on the screen if people are interested in WP Accessibility Day. Go to 2024.wpaccessibility.day. Register now. As Amber said, it's free to register. If you do want a t-shirt, it comes with a donation. You can do that at the same time. But we look forward to very much to seeing you all next week for the 24-hour event. And so if you have questions, you know how to reach out now and let us know. But we are very much looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, Amber, for letting me interview you and Steve. Thank you, Steve, for being here. And we'll see everybody next week at Accessibility Day.
All right.